My not so smart dad tries really hard to understand when I explain things I'm currently studying, despite deep down not knowing what the heck I'm talking about. What are some really endearing things your parents do? I'm living at home because I went back to grad school. Anyway, my dad just retired and now he makes me lunch every day. It's so cute. He even makes my morning tea. My dad on chat. Dad, hi, HWI, hope you are doing well. Me, hey dad. Dad, is it okay if I type normal words on internet chat? My dad starts all of his text messages with hi this is dad and signs them with love dad, no matter how short the message. So I'll get something like hi this is dad, when are you coming over today, love dad. My dad is so in love with my mom that it's like a Disney movie. If my mom has to work on weekends or late on weekdays, he will sit at the kitchen table watching TV or reading until she gets home. He'll complain about how hungry he is but refuse to eat for hours on end because he wants to eat with his wife. It happens about twice a week and it's one of the cutest things I've ever seen. I'm the dad. I have 2 sons in their mid-teens and they play numerous musical instruments. Guitar, bass, drums and trumpet mostly. They are involved in all the musical programs in their high school and have their own ska punk band as well. I have no musical talent but decided to learn guitar because it looks like so much fun. I am terrible and I struggle but they always lie and say I'm doing great. I used to play in a death metal band. My parents hated the music, but still let us disturb the peace once a week and practice in their garage. They'd go to shows whenever they could. A bunch of kids in black t-shirts in a mosh pit, with my straight-laced parents in the back. Makes me smile when I think back on it. My mom likes every one of my Facebook updates even I'm so goddamn hungover I'm not even leaving the couch today. Also, she's had a cell phone for over a decade and still thinks she has to yell into it for me to hear her. How my mum does this. Every single picture I put on Facebook my mum likes. She also does the yelling down the phone, even when her grandchildren are asleep in the buggy next to her. Must be a generation thing. On my dad's internet homepage is the current weather for whatever city I'm living in and whatever city my brother is living in. Whenever I call him, he always says stuff like I saw it was right cold in Denver the other day. Southern dad. He also always tells me the exact location of all the dogs at that exact instant and how my former high school's football team is doing. I find all that rather adorable. I took a year out working before going to university. I lived with my parents during that time and worked as a temp in an office earning the minimum they could get away with. I wanted to pay my way though and agreed with my parents a fair rent to cover food and lodgings. The day I left for university, my parents gave me all the cash I had paid them for rent. They had taught me to budget for living costs, maintained my pride in allowing me to feel as though I was paying my way, and ensured I saved a good amount of cash to help me through university all at the same time. Brilliant. Filing this away for if when I have children. My mom recently learned how to text, so now I get a missed call, followed by a voicemail that's typically hi trow 17. It's me mom. It's 6:15 on Tuesday, just calling to say hi and make sure everything's well out there. You don't need to call right back. Love you, followed 30 seconds later with a text message saying the exact same thing, almost word for word. My dad is a crier. Not about just anything, only when it's something affecting one of his kids. Back when I was about 12, I won the regional spelling bee for homeschooled students, so I was able to move on to the state competition. However, it turned out that my dad was going to have to work the weekend of the state bee. He worked at a power plant and they were preparing for an outage, meaning everyone had to work overtime, no exceptions. This meant my mom would be the only one who could drive the 3 hours to Indianapolis, and she was deathly afraid of driving in the city on her own. I was so excited about getting to go to state, and I remember so clearly when my dad sat me down in the living room to tell me we wouldn't be able to go because he had to work. I tried to be calm but eventually broke down in tears, and he put his arm around me and said he was so sorry because he knew how much it meant to me. When I finally stopped crying, I looked up and saw his face was red and covered with tears. Still gets to me every time I think about it. Twist. He was able to finagle his way to get the one day off so we could go after all. He acted like it just worked out that way, but now that I'm older, I think he must have taken on some extra hours and or double shifts that week to be able to take the one day off. He cries when he's happy for us. 2. When my husband and I recently told him we're expecting our first child, and the first grandchild for him and my mom, he hugged both of us together and just held on for a long time. Then we heard him sniff and he says, "Oh, here I go again." This is so sweet. I'm tearing up a little too. My dad can't really walk and has a pretty hard time even with a walker. He got furious with me because I loaded a bunch of suitcases in the car without waiting for him to shuffle over and help. He still thinks I'm a 12-year-old girl. Right after my dad got a MacBook, he spent hours dicking around with Photobooth making funny faces playing around with the morphing tools. He sent me a barrage of emails with goofy faces. I laughed so hard I cried. My mother is the nicest woman imaginable, but in high school I was a total B to her. You don't know me. Angst. Before my senior prom my mother asked what me plans were for after. I told her vaguely that I was going to a friend's place, Chris, on the wrestling team. She didn't know him. Armed with only that information, she somehow called his mother, who, of course, knew nothing about the party. I was livid, screamed at her, then did not talk to her for weeks. Turns out, she was calling to see if she could provide some prom-themed cupcakes for the party. I felt like a crap. TLDR. Mom accidentally ruined after prom party with cupcakes. Time for you to make some I'm sorry and I love you mom-themed cupcakes. My father is a straight, sport-loving computer programmer in his late 50s. I'm a gay, sport-hating film student in his mid-20s. Watching him attempt to navigate the waters of romance conversations is oddly endearing. Come on, just use picture catcher so he can understand at least part of the context you are speaking in. I grew up pretty poor and lived in Section 8 housing until 5th grade. My mom didn't want us to head down a path that most my family chose because of where we lived. She got a second job and we got off welfare entirely by 6th grade and we moved down to the suburbs. We were still poor but in a lot better neighborhood. I was also able to feel a lot more safer doing after school activities, particularly sports, and by high school I was involved in 3 sports. Well, my endearing story isn't just about my mom working to get us out of the ghetto. It's all the other sacrifices she did on top of that. Every year those sports cost close $500 to be involved with. I remember telling my mom and she told me not to worry, she'd get the money. Or I had to take the SAT and needed money for the test. Again she said she'd find a way. Somehow she always managed to find funds just in time. I didn't know until I was nearly done with college that on those weeks I needed money for school, she would not eat at work for a week or two. Or she would take a bus in the freezing cold to save on gas. Or she would wait to buy a much needed pair of new work shoes. She said she never wanted me to feel I couldn't do something education related because we didn't have money. She wanted me to get educated and stay focused so I would never have to work as hard as she does. I am now a mechanical engineer and it makes me pretty happy that I am able to send money home to my mom so she no longer has to work 2 jobs. And I hope in the near future to be able to send her enough so she never has to work again. Whoa, I hope you know how lucky you are to be the son of this woman. Take care of her well for the rest of her life. Your story really touched my heart and I hope you live a good life and I hope she have good days before going away. On the flip side, my dad is brilliant and he is always patiently explaining complex subjects to me despite the fact I only scratch the surface of the topic with my limited brain power. I appreciate this kind of thing so much. When I was in elementary school, I loathed math. Evenings during the week were spent angrily scrawling numbers into my exercise book, sometimes even stabbing the pencil into several pages and ripping down them. My mom would then patiently tape up the pages and go through the questions until I understood them. She is the loveliest woman I know. My mom still refuses to let me pack my lunch for work and school. I'm 18. She works 2 jobs and is extremely busy, and yet every single morning she is up before I am making sandwiches for her children. I have told her multiple times that I can do it, but she insists. Even though it seems like a small gesture, it gives me an extra 15 minutes to sleep in and I appreciate that so much during my final year of school. I'm going to go give her a hug now. Mothers seem to have this thing about feeding their kids and being needed and useful to them. My mother put up with me being a bratty little crap and never once tried to kill me or have me institutionalized. Not quite as sweet as the other stories, but it certainly endears her to me. I'm quite amazed, now, about a decade later, that my mother did not murder me as a teenager. My dad, for a long time, had problems accepting his emotions. He grew up being taught that emotions are silly, and that knowledge and logic are most important. By the time I was in middle school, relations between him and the rest of my family were really strained. When I was in 8th grade, my mom made him move out to get his act together. They came really close to divorcing, and I'm so glad they were willing to put in the time and energy to work through the years of resentment and hurt feelings. This is all to say, he doesn't quite know how to treat his kids sometimes, but he loves us all, and really treasures his daughters. Every year for Valentine's Day and our birthdays, he buys us flowers. I'll wake up and he's gone to work, but there are flowers left for me. It's the sweetest thing. My dad was the same way, no emotions, until I got married and had kids. Now he's a mushy teddy bear, a total 180 from the hardest military father I grew up with. Every sport my brother and I tried, he did his best to be the coach of the team. Every sport, even throughout high school, he became our HS cross-country track coach. This led to him creating a track team when we moved to Florida, well before high school, when my brother showed an interest and talent in running. This led to him getting the funding for a real track at our local park, which is now used every day by walkers, runners and cyclers. It transformed a very large unused field into a very nice social and fitness oriented area. I believe the rest of the park followed suit to become really nice. This is the really endearing part of this story. I wasn't a competitive runner like my brother, so I decided to explore my options and came upon the pole vaulting event. I did this because absolutely no one did it and it looked fun as heck. This was my freshman year of high school and I still thought my dad just knew everything. He bought me a pole and got me started on exercises, getting used to it, putting up a rope and training me to go through the motions. During this time I realized he had bought books about pole vaulting and started learning how to do it right. He then turned right around and told me what he just read. It worked wonders. I was bending the pole and vaulting with perfect form. Lots of people wanted to do it when they saw me. He then used his knowledge and kicked off our pole vaulting team at high school. That was the day I learned, before you do anything, don't try to figure it out on your own. Educate yourself on how others have done it right, then put your personal touch it. You'll learn faster and be better in the end. I've applied this ever since. Everything is more enjoyable that way, including work. TLDR. Dad coaches every sport. I thought he knew everything. Turns out he'd read coaching books to teach us the right way each time. Ends up benefiting the community. Different one about my dad. My siblings have chosen not to have my dad in their life, so I'm his only kid that is still around really. I think this has made him really insecure sometimes about how much I love him. He was never one of those rough and tough dads. He was my best friend. He taught me to swim and ride a bike, was nice to boys I dated, gave me clothing advice in the mornings before school and is still who I call when I need someone to talk to. Whenever I go home he makes all my favorite foods and brings out his guitar because he knows how I loved hearing him play as a kid. When he figured out how to text I was the first one he messaged. We text a lot and talk at least once a week. And I always remind him how much I love him and appreciate everything he's ever done for me. He's a big softie and gets so happy and mushy. My mum just learned how to use smiley faces in texts. These are the last 3 texts I've had from her. :D: :B, 3, D, O. It's just cute that she's trying. My mom frequently texts me a pink heart followed by a purple heart and another pink heart. Her favorite color is pink and mine is purple. She says her hearts are hugging mine. So cute. My father is a serious guy when it comes to work. However, anytime he gets to use heavy machinery, family owns an electrical contracting company. He looks like an 8-year-old playing with a Tonka truck. He'll just be driving around with this childlike grin on his face. Parents who satisfy their inner child equals awesome. Growing up, I didn't go to church because neither of my parents believed in organized religion or were fairly agnostic. We lived in a tiny town where everyone went to church together on Sundays and I felt so left out. I started going to church with a group of friends and suddenly my mom started attending every week with me. She'd even go an hour early and wait in the car while I went to Sunday school. Years later I grew out of my interest in religion and am now an atheist. My mom and I talk about religion all the time and I asked her why in the world she would go to church when she so strongly opposed it. Matter of factly she replied, I'd never let you feel alone or unsupported no matter what choices you made. TLDR, my agnostic mom sat through years of church services so I wouldn't feel alone. I'm an atheist now so it's all good. Church is great for socializing. My dad never had a problem showing affection and telling me how much he loved me, how awesome he thought I was, etc. He was much more open than my friends' dads, but I never really thought about it until one day after college. I was at work and my dad called me and said he was calling just to tell me he loved me. I was like, no you're not, and he got my mom on the phone who said he had just looked up from his paper and said, I'm going to call Needmora Sugar and tell her that I love her. I laughed, teased him about it, and after we hung up went into my co-worker's office and told her about the call. In my retelling, I was laughing and rolling my eyes and looking at her like, aren't dads weird? When I looked back at her, I realized she was crying. Right then, it hit me that not everyone had a dad that was loving and incredibly supportive, and she would have given everything to have one phone call like that from her dad. It was really a moment when it all came into perspective. Like why my friends were always at my house, why my boyfriends could spend hours talking to my dad, and made me realize just how incredibly lucky I was. This is the dad I hope to be. I'm glad you realize how lucky you are. Not very many people ever figure it out. My mom whistled the same song to wake me up every day for almost 18 years. When I left for college, she found an alarm with a close rendition to what she whistled. I still complain when I hear it, like my mom is there even when it's just me. My dad is a computer science professor. He has almost no knowledge of government, the law, or anything related. Seriously, the man doesn't know his rights. He's so straight and narrow that he's maybe gotten one traffic ticket and I can't remember it, I was so young. He doesn't know a lot of it and he really couldn't give a crap. This fall I started law school and he's dug up some old legal textbooks as well as some of my old undergrad political science textbooks and calls me to tell me what he's learning. I know he doesn't care. It's just his reaction to me moving 300 miles away. I know he doesn't care. Trust me, he cares. My Grammy is a chubby little Italian lady. She was everyone's Grammy and always very stubborn. I went to her house one night to spend the night and she lived in a dead end, nice street in a good suburban town. On her way to bed she asked me if I remembered to lock my car. At the time I had an '89 Jeep Wrangler, so I didn't lock the doors because there was nothing valuable in it. I stupidly told her I never locked the doors because there was nothing in it. She told me she would wait up for me so I could go lock it. I tried to tell her that I didn't really need to lock my car, but she looks at me and says, I'll stand in the doorway and keep the light on so you can be safe and go lock your car. Needless to say, I didn't need a woman in her late 70s watching me walk to my car in her nice neighborhood, but I thanked her and went to the car and locked it. I miss her a lot. I'm white and my boyfriend is Korean. When my dad found out we were dating, he started asking distant relatives, one of whom married a Korean girl, for advice for me, bought me a bunch of books on Korean culture, and started learning how to cook Korean foods, all to help me be accepted by my boyfriend's family. He even bowed to my boyfriend's father the first time they met. It was not comfortable for anyone involved, considering my boyfriend and I are broken up right now because his family was so against our relationship. Primarily because I'm white. It's really meaningful for me to have my dad do so much to show that he supports us. That's really kind of him to try and be so considerate. I'm sorry that your boyfriend's family couldn't look past that and see how accommodating your family was towards his. Back when people still mainly had dial-up and were using things like the original Napster and ICQ. Haha, my dad thought it would be funny to prank some people. Now my dad knew I was into computers, but he was computer illiterate for the most part, but wanted to hang out with me and my brother for a bit. So we got on the computer and recorded him farting into the mic, and it was a really bad one. Sounded quite wet. So he, my brother, and myself spent the next 30 minutes or so sending that audio file to everyone on my ICQ list. Haha, it was great. The reactions were hilarious. I hope nobody used the mic after that. My mom eats her cereal like she's 5, the way she holds a spoon. My dad spends way too much time making his emails to me colorful. He also makes sure to find something to give every new boyfriend of mine based off of what I said he's interested in. Always something cool or something he already had. They are both 65. After I came out, my dad would occasionally forward me emails about LGBT activism or issues in our state, and I saw that they were from an advocacy group that he had signed up to receive emails for. It was so sweet that he just wanted to learn more and be educated and able to connect with me even more. Oh. Every time I think of stories of endearing parents, I think of that story on 4chan where that guy's dad would always do research on upcoming releases of video games he thought his son would like, and would work overtime to buy them for him. But his son never knew about it until after his dad passed away. Those freaking feels, man. I couldn't find it, but if anyone can, wanna link it? My dad is an electrical engineer who grew up in a country where you start specializing in a certain area in middle high school, so he's absolutely brilliant at math, physics, engineering, but didn't learn any humanities or even life sciences. Really. When I was in high school, he used to read my textbooks. He especially liked biology and American history. Every so often he'd look up and say things like, "There are so many things inside the cell," or start asking me things about the personal lives of the presidents. Pretty cute. He's excited about retiring because he wants to take community college courses for subjects he never got to study. Now I just feel dumb and lazy. I'm a bit late to the party, but my dad isn't my biological father. I still call him dad, and my mom will tell him that his daughter is on the phone, etc. Every single time he gives the exact same response. Bar like a terrifying apathetic monster. But every single time I can hear the smile in his voice. My wife was recently diagnosed with premature ovarian failure. Basically, she went through menopause at age 25 and we won't be able to conceive a baby through normal methods because she has no viable eggs. Our only option is using an egg donor, which will at least allow her to go through pregnancy and well include my genetics. Thing is really, really expensive. Like, all the money we had saved up for a house and then some expensive. My wife's parents heard about her diagnosis and that same day opened a joint account in her name with $30K in it. And on top of that, her parents already offered to give us extra money toward the house if we couldn't afford it ourselves. They're very well off, so it's not a financial strain for them, but it's still a frick ton of money. It's a brand new car or many vacations they could have had that they choose to hand to us instead without a second thought. On the other end of the spectrum, my parents were the ones we confided in when my wife and I were dating as teenagers and we thought she was pregnant. Her parents didn't even know we had sex and would have very strongly disapproved, maybe even have made us break up. My parents helped set up appointments with Planned Parenthood, listened and comforted when we broke down about seeing our lives suddenly changed. And my mom even went so far as carrying a cup of pee to the doctors with her to get a lab pregnancy test because my wife's girlfriend couldn't go without her parents finding out. False alarm, which made us so relieved at the time. Funny how that works. It's a brand new car or many vacations they could have had that they choose to hand to us instead without a second thought. Not to be a downer, but I'm sure they want a grandchild more than a vacation or car, judging by your description of them. They're getting something out of it too. Whenever I get home from college, my mom insists on preparing my favorite foods and making them for me all day, despite having work and many other things to take care of. I just moved away from my parents' house a few weeks ago and my dad's been kinda trying to keep in touch with me by email, even though he doesn't seem to have the best handle on it. When I get an email from him, it's usually a forward of a racist joke, or if it's an email he wrote himself, it's in all caps. We also used to watch Jeopardy every day before I moved out and we had a bunch of weird game rules and stuff. I miss that. Haha, the all caps thing. Punctuation optional. My parents both remodeled the pool house in our backyard so my boyfriend could move in and have his own bedroom due to personal problems at home. Mom was on tons of drugs. It was the sweetest and nicest thing that I think my parents could have ever done, seeing it was very costly. They knew it made me happy and that they helped someone out in need. This one's about my grandmother. She got a Gmail account last year and I say hi to her when I see she is online even if we can only talk for a minute. I talk to her on the phone every few months and every time she tell me that she feels less lonely when she sees my green light in her chat box, even if we don't talk. Apparently she tells relatives regularly about my green light and how it's nice to see me. I need to visit home more. Wow, that's some Gatsby crap. My dad tries to buy me every expensive thing my husband and I need, like a new bed, washer and dryer, etc. I love that he cares, but we're both employed adults. I know I'm his baby girl and he still wants to take care of me, but I also want to make sure he has money for his needs too. When I was younger, my mom started mailing me cards for various holidays. They were all signed my secret admirer and would tell me I was special and loved. Despite the fact that we lived in the same house, she actually mailed them and everything. She thoroughly denied she was the one sending them, even though the handwriting was a dead giveaway. She still sends me cards at random times now that I live farther away, although now she signs them properly. I have kept them all. My parents were the type of people that were strict, but in the sense of, we know everyone else has this kind of thing, but we know you and we know you won't like it, and most of the time they were right. They also would never buy me games except for the gift giving times, but would push me to work towards earning the game myself. Anyway, the endearing thing, or my mother. I am a big fan of gaming. Shocker, I know, and I would get excited about games, especially when I got them. Well, usually when I could get the most popular game. Its fad had passed. I get something Pokemon. They like Digimon. I get a Nintendo 64 game. PlayStation has become cooler. Stuff like that. I didn't care too much, but it stung a little. But sometimes, when I was playing a game, my mom would come into the room. She wasn't a fan of playing, but sometimes she would sit and watch while I explained what was going on. But no, I know it's not like what some of the other responses are, but I appreciated the fact that she would make it seem like what I was doing was still cool, and it made me realize that no matter whether your interests are cool or not, as long as you are happy, there will be people who are interested, and that is what is important. Thank you, Mom. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.